Hi, everyone. Welcome to the newest edition of Do It with Rio. Today, I'm really excited to be able to talk about a subject which I experience all the time, which is about the transformation and evolution of HR. And I'm very lucky to have Mallory Loone with me today, who is the co-founder of Work Inspires. I've seen her on LinkedIn so much, and I've heard so much about her, and this is my first time actually talking to her. So very exciting. Mallory, I'd love for you to introduce yourself a little bit.
All right, great. Hi, everyone. Thanks, John, for having me. It's been a great pleasure. And yes, after knowing you seeing you actually for so long, I'm glad to finally be connected with you as well and the work that you do. So, just a quick intro. We're from Work Inspires. So, basically, Work Inspires is a people engagement development company. Simply put it, is that we help companies to design learning engagement programs, which includes culture and leadership as well. So, I'm very happy to be here.
Fantastic. Actually, how has the pandemic been for your business?
Oh, 2020 when it first happened. See, I'm losing track of time. I think it's 2020, right? Yeah, 2020,
Yeah,
March 18th. Yes. So when it first happened, honestly, it was pretty bad because companies are still trying to figure out digit. At that point, I think you would agree, companies are
yeah,
just figuring out this word digitalization. And then the pandemic hit, and suddenly everything had to go virtual and everything had to go. So I think we had a bit of rough time. Honestly speaking, I had like almost zero income for like 7 months because people are just like, okay, everything stopped because we don't know what to do. But this year, I think companies have decided that you know what, screw it, pandemic, no pandemic, we're just gonna keep it going with life, pandemic, endemic,
yeah.
whatever, and we are now. So we're just gonna keep doing. So with that said, things actually got a lot busier this year, which is good for
Mm,
me. But on the other hand, we are so used to this change and ad hoc things that are popping up as well. Like
yeah.
last time, we would know that okay, this is downtime, this is peak period, and now because of this situation, they're like, oh, we're gonna expedite things, and now they're predicting next year maybe another lockdown. So let's physical
Yep.
events quickly. I'm just like, isn't it like December where generally, we are in holiday mood? I'm in holiday mood, but yet I'm working a lot.
Yeah.
So it's a bit
We
different
we
now.
we experienced the same thing. I mean, we launched in January 2020,
Mhm.
and then 2 months later, the pandemic hit.
Yeah.
So we had been building up this big sales pipeline. We had a lot of leads and a lot of potential customers, and then the lockdown was announced, and every single one said, you know what, we need to pause. We don't know what's going to happen. So it was a really scary time for us. But then everything just seemed to kick off, and pick up after that. And I think it's because HR people knew that they needed to digitalize a lot of what they did, but they had no motivation and no real reason to do it. And the actual pandemic gave them that reason to realize actually our server-based systems are not working. Work from home, and a lot of the things that we're doing we can't do because we're all at home. And a cloud-based system like VOHR actually helps out. But what do you think is the wider impact of the pandemic on the HR function?
Okay, I think a lot of times this is where sense of urgency come into play,
Mm,
right? Because a lot of times we said that, hey, we gotta go digital, we gotta eventually get that.
mm,
But this word has been mentioned like maybe 5, 6 years ago, and we're just taking our time, no rush. What's the urgency? Why fix what's not broken? So when this thing happened, everything suddenly just went, okay, we gotta rush it.
mm,
And so that's also where all this, I think HR itself changed very drastically because of that. And as usual, with most organizations, when we don't know what to do, we turn to HR. And
mhm,
HR is expected to be like the big mommy and daddy that solves every kid's problem in the organization. So that's where they came in. And I think that's where all these things rushed it. But on the other hand, just to detour a bit, right, with this digital thing, I've also seen where some of our clients invested very heavily into something they thought was important and needed,
mm,
but at the end, they didn't use any of it, or it wasn't as
mm.
effective. And on the other hand, there's also where companies that didn't do anything actually managed to survive better. So it's quite it's like no right or wrong per se. Like if you don't
Mm.
do something is wrong, but if you do something is wrong, it's just a matter of people. Which also why when we come back to HR function as a whole, right? Digitalizing and technology is one thing. The readiness of people is another thing. A lot of times we think we are ready, but we're actually not ready at all.
No, definitely, and it's you see lots of apps started up, not just in HR, but just in general. They're there 1 minute, and then 3 months later they've gone out of business. And it's that old adage: you create a business to solve a problem. And a
Yeah.
lot of HR apps or HR tech, they actually don't solve problems, right? They just add to the problem. They're just one more thing that's there. And I think the HR tech that survives and that grows is HR tech that actually solves real problems, and solves them easily, and solves them fast. There's no point in adopting tech that doesn't actually have a tangible effect on the business itself. And I think a lot of businesses that do go through these transformations or digitalizations, their biggest struggle is not actually implementing the tech or the automation or the digitalization. It's the baggage that people carry with them. People get so set in their ways of doing things, even when they have these new, better ways and tech tools, they still go back to the old ways because it's so entrenched in them. They've been used doing things the same way for 10, 15, 20 years. What do you think is the main people driver when it comes to doing some kind of transformation, whether it's tech related or non-tech related, whether it's just two companies merging that involves some kind of transformation? From an HR point of view, what do you think is the key driver to get things moving efficiently?
Okay, I'm going to give a very cliche yet important answer. In other words, the people.
Mm,
Leaders. Okay, as much as we said that, we got to drive bottom up, top down on these things, but most changes, whether you like it or not, does come from top down.
yeah.
And people are just, human beings, right? We don't change unless we have to change or we need to change. Like, example, if we are talking about losing weight, you naturally will enjoy eating, and who wants to sweat and work out and torture yourself in the gym unless you have to do it. So it's either you really have to do it, or you really found love and interest that you want to do it because it makes you feel good, it makes you feel confident, it
Mm,
makes you feel healthy. So when it comes to this, some things like technology or non-technology for that matter, it's a matter of like, okay, do we need to change or do we want to change?
mm,
So if I've seen where organizations where CEO drive changes. I've seen the most traditional Japanese like organization really drives massive human being, people related or people engagement changes, which is generally not common in Japanese companies. Because the CEO said, you know what, this is important, people is
mm.
important, we gotta do something. And suddenly the entire organization go, oh, we're people friendly. So for
Yeah.
staff that's been working there for like 20 years and go, since when? When did this happen? Because the CEO came in and suddenly everything is people friendly. But imagine if I've worked ground up for the organization for 20 years where I've had bosses yelled at me, I've had, just do your job, don't ask question, leadership style. And I ended up leading my own team in a way that is like that because that was how it was taught to me. And suddenly this new CEO came and said, you know what? You gotta love people more. And
Mm.
this person will be like, you never said that for 20 years of my life. So all these things happen, and that's where changes become very hard. So we talk about the driving force, right? As much one factor is of course the top. The top needs to lead it, and I always tell organizations this: you can't get 100% support.
Yeah.
Even the prime minister can't get 100% support in everything, right? That's why I call democracy
Yeah.
for a reason. Um, but if you can't get their support, ask them not to be a blockage.
Yeah.
So I always
Yeah.
say that even when we're doing leadership or culture transformation, whatever it is, I said if you can't jump on board because maybe not everyone is people friendly or not everyone really cares about engagement and not everyone really is passionate about doing this, it's all right. But don't be the reasons why your staff and your team cannot enjoy the privileges and engagement that the organization is doing for you, or whether it's in HR, non-HR, whatever it is related, right? So similarly, after that, you have the second driving force, which is the managers mid-level.
Mm.
Because a lot of times the top says that you gotta do this, but they don't say why you gotta do this. They just say you gotta do this. So when it reaches the management, the middle level managers, some of them, as you would know, will be like, "Oh yes, we are very nice managers. I'm very happy to help develop my people. I'm very happy to participate in such thing." And on the other hand, you will get, especially when it comes to tech related, "Are you replacing my job? Am I being irrelevant now?
Yeah.
what's happening with these new changes. I remember even my own family members, I've heard them, especially those that have been working with throughout their whole lives, and they are saying that, we are going into this robot thing. Robots are going to replace our job. And I'm like, the robots don't exactly replace your job. They just make jobs different.
Yeah, yeah,
But they don't get it. They're just saying the company is investing in robots.
yeah.
So when you have that level, another level, if you don't educate it well and communicate well, then there the second level that would be the hindrance towards any changes for that matter, tech or non-tech related.
Mm. And it's funny. It's funny. A lot of junior HR folks in the clients that we work with, they think that Brio HR is to replace them, as in it automates lots of manual tasks, and can essentially reduce the amount of manpower that you need. But the idea is that it takes people away from manual tasks so that they can refocus on people.
Yeah.
It's not about taking away people's jobs. As you said, it's about changing their jobs from something operational and manual to something value adding and strategic. But it's funny. I've um, I've been involved in a lot of recruit transformation of recruitment functions. So that's my area. That's my kind of career background. So coming into companies and really transforming the way that they do recruitment, and a lot of what the problems that I find is actually habit. People get into a habit of doing things a certain way, and even certain very simple things like a lot of companies I work for, they insist on before they start interviewing a candidate to have their salary, their notice period, and other things which might automatically rule them out. And I always have to just throw that out the window. I say, what's your priority here? Is it to hire the best person in the market, or is it to make your job easy? And the processes should be based around hiring the best person in the job, and not around making your job more easier. But sometimes just to get that idea into people's head and to get them to stop demanding that the candidate tells them their salary before they're allowed to start the interview, it can take a year. It can take a year of getting that drilled into someone's head. And I've had to make people redundant because they're not able to follow new processes. They're not able to adapt, and it's very very tough. But have you experienced that as well, where it's just simple processes and the habit of the way of doing things, and the idea that we've done it this way because that's the way we've always done it, so why should we change?
Yeah, completely. I talking about recruitment, I completely agree with you. I was especially now because like for part of what we do is also we work with graduates, students who are
Mm,
graduating. One because I feel that's a good way of giving back. Making sure that we are in line with whatever it is that the future generation wants. But on the other hand, of course, makes me feel younger every single day. So that's the
yeah.
other secret, right? But the key thing we've realized that today's generation, they are very particular with the way the HR do things. If
Mm,
let's say recruitment process is tedious or it makes no sense, then they actually make a fuss about it. They will complain
mm,
and go, I don't get why do you need my resume and ask me to retype every single thing from my
yeah.
resume into this website that you have. What's the point of asking for the
Yeah.
resume? That kind of, why can't they just link your LinkedIn to your resume? Then why am I spending time doing this and this? So these are questions that I get from students these days, and they actually said it clearly shows that the company is not future ready.
Mm. No,
That's the
it's
remark they would make. And even though it's a risk that, okay, it gone were the days that they were so desperate for a job they would just take anything in the market. These days they're very particular about all these little things because they know that life is going to be hard if I join this company. That's
mm,
their assessment. So I always tell recruiters, HRs, especially those in the front line, you're facing students, and talent acquisition is the term they use these days. You are the first impression of the organization.
mm,
So
yeah.
if you don't update and keep changing and moving and get rid of the way, like you said, habits, old habits, and change to new way of doing things or better way for doing things, then you are going to be the brand that says your organization is not future thinking. Your
Yeah.
organization is not forward thinking, right? So this is on the recruitment level, but even on the learning, like we do more learning and engagements, and we always say this. You and I can go to the, okay, I think may not be such a smart thing, but since we're in a pandemic, I will just say it anyway, right? You and I can go to the doctor saying that, oh, our stomach is upset.
Mm.
But a doctor will never assume that goes, oh, John and I got the same issue, so here's your medication. The doctor doesn't do that. Even with digital, nowadays we can do consultations
Yeah.
digitally. A doctor will still never go, oh, you got stomach pain, so this is the medication. They will ask a lot of questions, they will diagnose, they will assess, because everybody is different. However, in the L&D scene, the learning development scene, the traditional way of doing this is that, oh, in this year, we have this amount of training
Yeah.
and this amount of budget to use and this amount of things that our people need. So what I'll do is I'll go to wherever providers and I go, okay, you know what? This is what I need, go find me trainers. And I
Yeah.
get really frustrated. I'm going to be like the devil for saying this, but I get really upset and frustrated when people send me a standard brochure template that they use for every other organization. And I'm like, how is this possible?
Mm.
It's like you're prescribing the same medicine for two people based on an
Yeah.
assumption. I don't get how is that. So the like what we do is that we actually consult. We go in, we diagnose, and we don't take the HR words for it. We actually talk to the employees and go, "Is this what you're actually going through? Is this the actual challenges?" And we realize more often than not, it's not what it's said. It's a lot
Yeah.
of underlying issues that we have to dig up, and that basic way of doing this by right is actually when the HR person before they approach us, they should do it. These are things
Mm.
they should have conversations with. But because they are being taught to do a training needs analysis or whatever it is that be given to them, they don't move forward. They
Mm.
don't change.
It is.
And
It is
it's
funny.
shocking.
I do. I do a lot of work in terms of culture and how to build culture and values. And the more I do it, the more I realize, even in a small company of less than 100 people, finding common values is enormously difficult. Um, Most companies, they do the typical thing of writing the values on the wall, etc., etc. But actually, even if you take very, very simple surveys of that kind of, giving them 5 options of very excited, not excited, etc., and give them some ideas. Even in a small company, you'll get many at one end, many at the other end, many in the middle. There's never any common ground, and it's the same when it comes to L&D. There's never
Yeah.
any one size fits all, right? And it's interesting what you said about recruiters or HR being the the first the first person people meet in a company, and the ambassadors of the company. Often I consult with other companies about their recruitment, and I talk to the CEOs, and one of the things they struggle with is actually hiring recruiters. um, they don't necessarily know how to interview them or how to assess them. And I always say, just imagine you're actually hiring someone, um, for investor relations role or a head of business development role. um, and if you're not confident that that person can represent your company to investors, to senior clients, to customers, then they also won't be able to be a recruiter,
Yeah.
because that's the skill of recruitment. It's representing the company and selling the company and thinking of a career in the company as a product that you need to market and sell, and be a positive ambassador about. But actually, that brings me to my next question. I think, a lot of things have changed steadily over the last 20 years, but also extremely fast over the last 3 or 4 years, as the tech world has changed so much. How do you think HR needs to evolve over the next 5 years? Or what do you think they need to do in order to stay relevant in top companies?
Okay, I think overall, good thing that came out of this is that HR now became the front line and center for almost everything COVID related.
Mm.
They are the process, they're the SOPs, they are also the person in the risk assessment team, they're everything. So suddenly HR became the most busiest job. On top of that, they need to keep engagement, employees happy, payrolls in check, and everything goes on as normal. So I think that's the good thing that came out in some sense, because once upon a time HR was a lot on the paperwork. They are
Yeah.
the procedures, they're the policemen, they're the everything that requires back end job, they're never the front. But now it's good that HR has also become part of strategy planning. So speaking of that, I think these days a good organization, I would say, is one that will be able to marry a business goal and a people goal together.
Mm.
So a lot of times people tend to see separately, like, okay, this is my company's shareholders agreement, and these are things I want to make sure that the profitability, the revenue, the shareholders, investors are taken care of. And then these are the people things, and you don't see them together. So what happens is that you're spending money on the people side that doesn't gel to your business goals. So if that doesn't marry well, you're basically wasting money.
Yeah.
I always say that you're wasting money. You're putting money on people development and areas that doesn't grow your business, and then you wonder why at the end of the day we still cannot hit our target because you're
Yeah.
basically putting your efforts in the wrong places. So the key thing for every HR for me now to move forward is that you gotta sit down with the business team, and you as a HR you also gotta know business. I've also seen some younger executives that order those that are starting out. It says, "Oh, I have a degree in HR, right?
Mm.
It's not part of what I study to know business."
Mm.
And I
Yeah.
say it doesn't work that way anymore. It's like I like to use the analogy of startups because like in startups, you know every part of the business. As you know such thing as, oh, I'm just the CMO of this company. I need to know the marketing area. I
Yeah.
don't care because the company is so small. You gotta know every single thing to make sure the organization runs. So same thing like HR. You gotta know how the business run, what the business aspect is, what's the business goal that you're heading towards. So then you know how to get the people there. So that's your job to get the people there. But you gotta know business. If you don't tie business goal to your people goal, it's generally you'll never get buy-in. That's one. Number two, everything will be a waste of time. That's very frankly speaking.
Yeah.
And also for the culture thing you mentioned just now, right? And like, I really like your what you said. You know, people just put their cultures on the wall and they go, "Oh yeah, this is our company values," right? But I always say get everybody on the same page first. Is for example, a very basic thing, trust. Almost
Mm.
every company I know has the word trust as their corporate value.
Yeah.
And when we ask them, "What's trust?" What's trust to you? And some people will say, "Oh, trust is that I'll be able to trust you to deliver the job." But some people's trust is, "I want to know your personal life as well." So what is trust?
Yeah.
Yeah. So all these things are, I think, things that when you talk about the evolution of HR, right? There's no most of the time values are set by the founders 100 years ago or how many years the organization started. But with that said, on the HR side as well, the HR will also need to know that okay, these are things that sometimes you have to put your feet down and says it's not moving the organizations. We gotta change.
Yeah.
And a good HR leader would be able to do that. A respectable HR leader would be able to do that.
No, definitely. And it's funny, we at Brio HR we try to think what we made the mistake of trying to write what the management team thought were good values, and then we ran it by our employees, and all of them there was no kind of gel. So we tried to think what is the one common thing? What is the most narrow set of values that we could have? And you hit it. It was trust. That was the only one common thing that we all had. And then exactly as you said, because we're a small company of 30 people, we can still all go into one room and all chat and talk. And we spoke about trust, and probably for about 2 hours, everyone just giving different definitions of what trust is, what it means to them. So even when you narrow it down to something that the whole company agrees on, even with that, there's still so much room and just not disagreement, but different opinions of what trust is and what it means to you, and what it means to you in terms of the way that your colleagues interpret it as well. So it's not easy. It's
Yeah,
not easy.
it's
Um,
difficult. But I think at the end of the day, you can't please everybody, right?
yeah,
Especially as the organization grow to a certain scale, then it's like when we have a small team, everybody's like family. And then they want, especially startups, then the next time they wonder like, why when we first started, we were all so good together. Then what changed? Suddenly everything seems to go haywire when you hit the 20 people mark
mm,
or the 10 people mark. And after that, you start realizing that SOPs and procedures need to be in place. You got to run your startup like a
yeah,
organization structure because you cannot run it. It was before. There's no longer a 5 people, 6 people team. So
yeah.
these are things that I think even as startups need to adjust.
Yeah, and I mean that raises another recruitment issue. When you do come up with these fake values and fake culture, you hire based on that. Uh, and that means you're actually hiring the wrong people. They might be fantastic, but they haven't been assessed specifically for your real culture. They've been assessed based on your written on the wall culture. So it's actually very important to sit down and really define and think about what is the culture that you have, what is the culture that you want, what is the culture that you think the company is going to have to evolve into, and hire based on those things, rather than just this abstract idea of this is how we think it would be nice.
Yeah.
But with with that in mind, there are so many HR people in quite senior positions who really have most of their career essentially been that HR police person, policing the procedures, being responsible for employee compliance and regulatory issues, and that's what their job has been. Not it's not their fault. It's just what the companies they've worked for wanted. But if someone does kind of do that self analysis and realize that about themselves and realize that they do want to change, they do want to take on a more strategic role. They do want to grow into a much wider HR business type role. What's your advice to them? Because actually someone asked me. They asked me in a webinar, um, and it's a webinar with about 400 people. So I was kind of put on the spot, and they essentially said, their company doesn't want HR to be that strategic role. They just want them to do the normal thing. And I said, you've got two choices. One is convince your CEO, convince your management that HR can play a wider role, or you have to get out of there as quickly as possible, because at some point in the future, you probably will want to leave, whether it's 2 years, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years. And if you want to go into a more strategic role, they're going to look at your CV and they're going to ask you what you've done. And if all you can say is that you've done
Payroll.
payroll, etc., etc., you're not going to be able to move into that business kind of related HR progressive position. So you're damaging your career by staying there, unless you can convince your bosses to let you play a different role. But how would you answer that question, or what advice would you give to someone who has recognized that they do need to evolve, but maybe don't quite know how to do it?
Yeah, I would say what you said actually, but I always tell people that if a CEO can change in organizations, what
Mm,
makes you think an employee will stay to the end?
yeah,
I mean, that's a fact, right? So when even founders leave organizations after
yeah,
they feel they cannot contribute, they can't grow anymore, then they will just sell the business and go somewhere else. It's just normal. So even I would say the same thing in the sense where if you can't grow there, you gotta grow somewhere else, because especially in HR, eventually there's a maximum limit that you can reach. And if you don't have a signature that people want you for, then eventually it's going to be difficult. You're just going to be a general HR practitioner.
yeah,
But if you look at all the greater HR leaders or the good HR leaders, they all have certain brand, like an employer branding brand, a culture brand, a learning brand. So companies want to headhunt these people because they
yeah.
need it for their organizations, right? So all HR practitioners, for that matter, I always encourage them. After a certain level, you would have already touched base about everything. You kind of need to ask yourself where you want to go and what you want to specialize in.
Mm,
And there's no form of, I mean, today we can get certification almost anything in town, but everything still comes from practicality and experience, regardless the case. So that's the first thing. But on the other hand, right, if let's say you decided that I want to stay and I really want to try and see, my answer would be number one, it's your head fighting for you, the HR director.
mm,
Because the biggest hindrance we always see is the HR director sometimes. If the HR director or the HR head doesn't put their feet down and say that no, this is what HR is supposed to be doing,
mm,
then everybody else at the bottom
yeah.
can't do it that way for sure. Okay, so that's the first thing, is your head fighting for you. Then the second thing I would ask is that have you learned enough about the business to convince your CEO, COO, and management team that HR can do more? Because a lot of times, like I said, back to the part where people related doesn't help the business part. Everybody thinks that, oh, I'm investing in training is a cost. And the only thing they found useful is sales training, because that can be directly seen as a sales profit.
Mhm,
But other than that, they were never ever like, what we are doing is almost intangible. Like, how do we
mm,
measure? So even people like us, we've already come up with measurements to say, okay, how has things changed? And
yeah.
we use practical examples of how things can change. But that comes with a long-term investment. There's not a one size fit all, one day solve problem things. It's not Panadol pill. So
Yeah.
with that said, I would say number one, look back at your business goals and then come up with a plan of what can the people element do to help that. It could be revision, but I mean, even if it's operational, revising com and ban, revising the way benefits are paid out, revising the ways KPIs are measured. These are things that are tangible that you can see. Then you have the learning aspect. Then you have the culture aspect. Culture is always the last because it's always the longest thing. But the low hanging fruit is always revising common band, revising KPIs. That's already a good start to gel
Yeah.
business people.
Yeah. And it's funny you mentioned it's hard to show the tangible effect of HR, a lot of HR initiatives, and it comes down in many ways to certain missing skill sets in HR, like data analytics, but
Yeah,
also which can fairly easily be learned. You know, if you can use Excel and know how to use it correctly, you can do the basics. But actually, the fundamentals of kind of actual data science and knowing not just how to take data and show what you want it to show, but actually designing experiments and um, uh, uh, deciding what questions to answer. What are the right questions to answer to see if this initiative is having the correct impact, and how you can gather the data, which is going to show the impact that it's having. Because a lot of HR initiatives, on the one hand, they actually do have a massive impact, but it's not a tangible impact that you can see. It could
yeah,
be if you knew how to measure it, but it doesn't get measured. On the other hand, some have virtually no impact, but the CEO kind of likes them, so they get carried on. So you've got these mix of things with things which don't have an impact get pushed forward, things that do have an impact get pushed aside, but there's no real way to tell. And I think that's a symptom of data analytics not really being taught as an HR skill, which it really is to be, and it's a massive gap in the HR market. And I think it still remains a fact that HR in many ways remains disconnected from the business,
yeah. I
and
actually agree with you. Like data
mm,
is something that even I thought I never knew I needed. I mean, I
mm,
studied accounting. And
mm,
then after that, I went to this people development team. I never even thought data would be something important. I mean, until today. Then I realized that, oh gosh, data is actually, if you have the right data, you can do almost anything.
mm,
But back to the part where do you know how to ask the right questions? And actually, it's not really that difficult. You don't need to know everything with technology or data for the matter, right? You don't need everything. And you just need, even if let's say you know some basic fundamentals, you can always like speak to people like you who can consult them better. And they, at the very least, right, whatever you are sharing, they can understand.
yeah,
Because I've had some that want to keep in trend and they come and tell me that, Mallory, I would like to include blockchain in my AI planning. And I'm just like, what is that sentence? Do you
hmm,
even know what you're talking about? I'm just trying to comprehend.
yeah,
Do you throwing terminologies doesn't sound smart if you don't know what it means.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that's where I do.
Blockchain is one of those phrases that people like to throw out, and they don't even know what it means. Uh, and people describing an advanced Excel sheet as a AI, when really it's just a yes no function in an Excel sheet. Yeah, I get it a lot.
Exactly. I was just about to say I'm pretty sure you get a lot of that kind of remarks coming in. So
Yeah,
that's what I mean by if but that's where you cannot consult like someone like you in Brio, you cannot consult and help an organization if they do not know what they want.
no,
End of the
exactly.
day, if they can tell you that okay, these are data that we have and these are things that we want and these are results they want to get, then you will be able to go, okay, these are the things that we can provide. But if you don't even think of that to begin with, then how are we supposed to ever consult you and help you?
What do you think of the importance of the employee perception of what HR does? Because definitely, as we've mentioned, oftentimes HR is very disconnected from the actual business goals, and employees do see them as the employee police, and they don't necessarily see them in many cases in the most positive light. But then on the other hand, you have these times when HR really does try to get involved very, very heavily on strategy on the business side. And I've seen this in past companies. Then employees start to think, why is HR getting involved? It's not their business. Why are they trying to push their agenda? Um, where's the balance point, or how do you get employees on board that HR can play a much different role, and in fact a very positive role?
Yeah, I think, okay, employees to me are pretty simple in the sense where general employees for that matter, they're very simple in the sense where as long as my job is growing and not affected, I'm pretty okay. Okay. I'm not saying that they are incompetent or anything of the sort,
Mm,
complacent. No, I'm saying that as long as whatever agenda you're trying to push out serves me good, generally they're all right. So a lot of times, right, employees will have this notion, like I said, it comes back to more transparency.
yeah,
So if HR says, oh, we're going to do a employee engagement survey, simple employee engagement survey, even though it's supposed to be anonymous, right? There are employees that refuse to answer honestly
yeah,
because they feel that, oh, what if I tell the truth and I get into trouble?
yeah,
So what do we do about that? So these are things that HR, as much as HR is saying that no, just be honest, we don't know, even we don't know the result. It, most of the
yeah,
time you get a gap. The employees are still not that okay. So what I would advise is that to lead. This is where leading by example come into play, right? Let's say you were to have a discussion session, a dialogue session with the management team. Okay, this is another common engagement you see today, dialogue session management team, right? Let HR be the person that asks a tough question. I mean, you said transparency, so let HR be the person that asks a tough question. And if you see that when employees see that, oh, it's okay, I can bring this up and I can be asked, it's really anonymous, it's really I don't know who. And or either it's really like, okay, when we say transparent dialogue, it's transparent dialogue, they would have more self-assurance or more assured to go like, okay, I understand what you're saying. That's
mm,
all. It's
yeah,
actually not that difficult. But the part is that a lot of times HR is delivering messages. They are not exactly leading by example. They're just
yeah,
informing you that don't worry, trust us. This is gonna work out. Don't worry about it. But if not, they are not the person putting their head on the line for it. So if they
yeah,
can put their head on the line and say, okay, you know what, I'll be the first person to lead it. I'll be the first person to ask this tough question. I'll be the person that drive this. Then they will know that okay, it's gonna turn out well. So same thing like when we do culture initiatives or leadership engagements, whatever it is, we said, okay, HR, somebody gotta be the person that on your camera, on your mic and ask that question. I don't care who you pick somebody.
yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah, and when they do that, then you get all the transparent. I mean, as much as even if it's anonymous, at the very least, honest questions are coming in the conversation. So I think that's a good start. And to me, that's a good start to roll things out. And
I
of course,
know.
second, yeah, go ahead.
Like, I was gonna say, I know in the pandemic, I've got a very good friend who was in a large international company, which had to close down because of the pandemic. Well, they didn't close down. They made about 80% of their workforce redundant, which was in the tens of thousands. And their local HR in Malaysia didn't want to be involved. They thought it was the management team's issue. So she didn't want to answer any questions. She didn't want to be there to help employees. It's just a management issue. There's nothing we could have done about it. It's one of those, and that it really makes things worse. Huh? I think it really, when
Oh,
you have these emergency situations,
yeah,
you
correct.
need people to stand up and take responsibility. But I mean,
Yeah.
what do you think of that idea that the CEO is the first HR person, and actually HR is the responsibility of every manager, every director, every person who leads a team? Do you think that is true, and more companies should adopt that kind of
Yes.
philosophy?
100% should be stand as a policy made company wide or something. I completely support that. It's
Mm,
like I would say, as long as you like the word leadership, right? We have already moved to the part where we all agree that you can be a leader without being a leader. Like you
mm.
can be a leader without holding positions. You can be a leader without being a manager. Just as long as you work with people, you can be a leader. We've all agreed that. Why can't that be a people thing? I'm just like, we've already moved to the leadership part. Why can't we move to the people's responsibility should be everyone's responsibility? not a HR's responsibility. So I've also, I give you an example, right? We've run this culture engagement with a company that's about 1,200 people, right? And they were so, when we did the focus group with all the VPs and AVPs of the organization, which is about 200 of them, and they were really venting, like the HR especially, they were saying that, excuse me, all of you as vice president and president of this organization, all of you are leaders. You are promoted because you're supposed to be able to manage people. How come every single small tiny issues that about employee upset, employee disagreement, employee everything comes back to HR? Then might
Mm.
as well HR be the heads of everything. Why is everything HR's job?
Yeah.
Yeah, which is also why when you notice certain departments are doing well and certain departments that don't. So certain employees say, I like this boss, I don't like that boss. Because when people's job is not everyone's responsibility, you don't standardize things like that. So because of that, some leaders are nice, some leaders are not so nice, and you'll get little culture pockets everywhere,
Mm.
which is could be toxic to some and could be nice to the other. So and that affects talents joining your company. Because imagine if I'm going to join Brio and I'm going to go, John, how is it like in Brio? And John had a fantastic experience and go, oh, Brio is a fantastic company. This, everything went well. But what if I talk to somebody who had a different boss
Yeah.
and the experience wasn't as pleasant? And that's the word that comes to me that, oh, don't bother. And I would be like, okay, and you lost a good talent.
Mm.
So that's the vicious cycle of everything where everybody has a role to play to make sure that good talents join, people stay,
Yeah.
company costs are taken care of, people are developing, business goals are met. Everybody, it's an entire cycle. It's not a disjointed affair.
And actually, social media has um, made that even more relevant, right? I think now, from a recruitment point of view, social media has completely changed the way I do my job in terms of being able to get my employer brand out there on a free platform rather than a job street or a paid platform. But also, there's so many websites now like Glassdoor um, where people publish their opinions.
Yeah.
And the problem is that when you have a really good experience, your automatic reaction is not to go on Glassdoor and say, "Wow, I love it here," blah blah blah. But when you do have a bad experience, that's when you do want to complain.
Yes.
Um, so a lot of these sites they really help in terms of giving more transparency, but they also seem, in my experience, to exaggerate the negative. But do you think social media has had a wider impact on HR practices outside of recruitment?
Oh yes, for sure. Because okay, I give you an example, right? Okay, generally to me, HR, like I mentioned, is a brand.
Yeah.
HR is known as the heart of the organization. If the heart beats well, everything functions. If the heart doesn't beat well, everything doesn't function. Simple, it's like human anatomy that matter. So even if, let's say, we talk about culture, talk about
Mm.
L&D, regardless of the matter, if I see on social media that, for example, Nadia from SP Setia, okay, so
Yeah.
she's somebody who's pretty active on her Instagram and her LinkedIn and all that. So if I see that, wow, she's posting about this coaching program that SP Setia is doing, oh wow, she's coaching about this, she's talking about that. That makes me, if I'm a person that's, it could be employees one, or either I'm somebody who's just curious, I'm somebody who wants to know
Mm.
about the organization or join the organization, then it creates that idea that, oh, if I'm interested in developing myself, SPCT will be the place I want to go,
Yeah.
because that's the notion it creates, right? But that's also, like you said, come back to the lack of good things on social media. I always tell this to everybody, not just the HR for the matter, everyone in organizations, that you are all the brand ambassadors of your company. If you like the company, for that, I'm giving the benefit of the doubt that you do like the company you're in.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you have a good experience, share it out, leverage on the opportunity to brand, not just for yourself but for your company as well. Because people will just go on LinkedIn and say, I go type Brio,
Yeah.
and then you're gonna see you, they're gonna see everybody else posting, and they go like, oh, this seems like a fun and lively company. So if it suits me, I would want to know more
Yeah.
about it. So same thing like other people outside as well. Employees for the matter. Sometimes it's a lot more relatable coming from an employee than it
Mm.
is on the outside. So it's not
Yeah.
just joining, but also on the other hand, I've also had a HR friend who told me this. The only reason why probably have my job, I mean, among many reasons, but this is probably key reason, is because my boss see me posting on LinkedIn all the time.
Yeah.
So because I CEO, sometimes they're not here, especially for MNCs, we have numerous countries to run. And they can't see you all the time, but they say, oh, you're so active on LinkedIn, you're doing so many things for the company. Oh yeah, so you must be doing your job.
Yeah, yeah. I think the rise of the idea of the HR influencer is coming. There's more HR celebrities than
Oh,
there was
yes.
these days, and it's an interesting time for HR. HR is slowly starting to become sexy, and a profession that people really genuinely want to move into instead of the more traditional sexy industries like marketing and things like this.
And I
Um,
think it's more, you see more HR practitioners speaking on conferences now than you do CEOs.
Oh, yeah, yeah, that's definitely true. But what from working with lots of companies, do you have any pet peeves when it comes to HR policies? I mean, for me, there's kind of some of the more mundane ones, but quite serious, like bereavement leave, being forced to provide a death certificate to so that you can go on bereavement leave. I've always thought is stupid, but almost every company I've worked for in the past, if you want to take bereavement leave, you have to provide a death certificate, which is the worst time to ask for any kind of paperwork or anything like this. And I think there's a lot of baggage like this left over in HR. But then there's also things like performance management, which almost every company does, and almost every company kind of gets wrong. And again, they just treat it like a process that you have to do. I don't think I've ever met any manager, employee who said, I love doing
I was
appraisals.
going to say that.
I think it's a really value adding part of the year. It's always that thing that, is it that time of year again? Why are we wasting time on this? But what do you think are the key mistakes that companies make when they're trying to design these things?
Okay, I think performance review to me now it becomes paperwork, like you said. And you're just about to say it. I'm about to say that it's time of the year. It's like,
Mm,
year end
yeah,
bonus payout, and everybody's cracking their head out
yeah,
thinking, oh gosh. So now I would think that for me, productivity measurement as well is one of the traditional way of productivity measurement, clock in, clock out, and all these things should be gone by now because of this virtual thing. But I still have companies telling me that, or employees telling me, my boss requires me to send a WhatsApp message every day by 9 o'clock to say that we are awake. And I'm
mm.
like, what? And also, like, for example, if like certain platforms now, if you're not on your computer for a bit too idle a bit too long, then it kind of shows that
Yeah,
you're idle.
yeah,
And things like, I'm just like, why? I get that, you want, but sometimes it's not needed to stare at my laptop.
mm,
So why am I staring at my laptop for no reason? So these are things, to me at this point, I still ask myself, why is this so fixated upon when it could be measured as results, as
yeah,
deliverables? It should be rewarded that, oh, you finish your job fast, you're efficient. And with this work from home and work from office and this hybrid thing, there are parents, for example, like yourself, maybe, your kids wake up at certain hours and
yeah,
you only have certain hours to work because you gotta adjust. Sometimes you work night when you're sleeping. Sometimes you work very early in the morning. Like I have
yeah.
somebody who sends me email at 3 o'clock because her kids only sleeps that time or something like that. So, and if I'm a boss, I'll be like, oh, it doesn't count because your working hours starts at 9. These are things that to me should be gone, like forgone. But on the other hand, talking about speaking of performance review, right? Other things should be included for me, like efforts of engagement. As a leader, if I have a team under me, the frequency of feedback or the effectiveness of feedback, not just the frequency, but the effectiveness of feedback should be something that my staff should be able to assess me for. And then the effort I put to coach, to mentor, these
Yeah.
are things should be included. Anything that's culturally going to be rolled out or changed should be included
Oh,
because
definitely.
that's the only way to get people to perform, consistently across the board.
Mm. And I've always thought it should be focused on growth. It should be focused on not what this employee has done, but what we want you to do and how we're going to help you to do it in the future.
Yeah,
Um,
I think
because
also other things like extra efforts like ideation, suggestions, these are things that you should, I would say force it, but it should be recognized as, this person is doing extra well.
Yeah, definitely. But I think that's all we've got time for now. I think that's coming up to the hour mark, which is always a long time for people to talk. But hey, Mallory, thank you so much for taking this time to talk to me. If
No.
people do want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for people to reach out to you?
Oh, I'm on every social media platform, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, at Mallory Loone, or you can email me at mallory@wixspice.com.
Fantastic. Thank you again for joining. Everyone, thank you for tuning in and watching us and continuing to support us. Mallory, it's really great to talk to you and hear your opinion on these things. And hopefully we can catch up again soon. Um,
Yes, for
have a
sure.
yeah, have a fantastic day. Take care, everyone, and thanks again for tuning in.
Thank you. Take care. Stay safe.